The first sound isn't a splash. It's wood tearing. A deep, violent crack explodes through the hull beneath the crew's feet, like a tree splitting under lightning. The deck jerks sideways. Men slam into railings. A harpoon skids across the boards and disappears into the sea. Then the ship shudders again. Not from waves, from something underneath. Seawater begins forcing its way through the planks, first a trickle, then thin streams, then multiple jets spraying through seams that didn't exist seconds ago. She's leaking! Lanterns swing wildly, throwing frantic shadows. The smell of wet timber, whale oil, and salt water fills the air. Then the lookout screams, "Whale!" Off the starboard side, something enormous moves beneath the surface. A dark mass longer than the ship itself. The ocean bulges. Then it rises. A sperm whale. Nearly 80 feet of muscle and bone. Scarred skin. A massive square head turning slowly toward the ship. For a moment, it just floats there, watching. Sailors who have hunted whales their entire lives suddenly stop moving. Because whales don't do this. They flee. This one doesn't. Instead, it begins to move. Not forward, backward. Slowly, deliberately, creating distance. Like it's lining something up. Then it charges. The impact detonates through the hull like a cannon blast. The ship lurches violently. Deck planks buckle. Men are thrown to the floor as the vessel groans under impossible force. This was the whale ship Essex, November 20th, 1820, nearly 2,000 miles west of South America in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And what happened next would become one of the most horrifying survival stories in maritime history, because the whale sinking the ship wasn't the worst part, not even close. After the Essex went down, the surviving crew would drift for over 90 days, starving, dehydrated, losing their minds, until survival forced them to do something so disturbing that even they could barely speak about it again. And by the time rescue came, some were still clutching human bones. But disasters like this don't just happen. They build, quietly, one mistake at a time. The Essex left Nantucket in 1819, chasing one of the most valuable resources of the 19th century, sperm whale oil. The ship wasn't large, just 87 feet long, but like most whalers, it was built for endurance, capable of spending years at sea hunting across the Pacific. On board were 20 men, Captain George Pollard, Jr., young but experienced, First Mate Owen Chase, aggressive and skilled, and several teenage sailors who had never faced the open ocean before. For over a year, the voyage followed a familiar rhythm: long hunts, harpoons striking deep, blubber boiling into oil. But by late 1820, something changed. The Pacific whaling grounds were unusually empty. Fewer whales, less oil, and pressure began building. A failed voyage meant financial ruin, so the Essex pushed farther west, farther than most ships dared, into a remote region sailors called the offshore grounds, thousands of miles from land. No ports, no rescue routes, no nearby ships, but plenty of whales. It should have been the perfect hunting ground. Instead, it became a trap. Because sperm whales are not passive animals. Adult bulls can weigh over 50 tons. Their skulls are reinforced with dense bone and oil-filled structures designed to absorb massive force. Which means if a whale ever decided to ram a ship deliberately, the ship wouldn't stand a chance. And on November 20th, 1820, one whale did exactly that. But the real disaster hadn't begun yet, because once the Essex sank, 20 men would be left in 3 small whaleboats, with almost no food, almost no water, and one critical decision that would seal their fate. But before we go deeper, if you're into real survival stories where history feels darker than fiction, This is exactly where it starts getting worse. Because right now, the whale is already turning, and it's coming back for another strike. The whale doesn't charge like an animal. It accelerates with intent. For a brief second, the ocean ahead of the Essex looks normal. Dark water, gentle swells, the ship's shadow stretching across the surface. Then the sea lifts. Not a wave, a bulge. As if something massive is pushing the water upward from below. The crew barely registers it before the impact hits. The hull flexes, violently, unnaturally, like the ship is trying to recoil from pain. Deck planks ripple. The mast shivers. Rigging snaps tight with a sharp metallic whine. Men are thrown forward. Below deck, chaos explodes. Barrels crash. Tools scatter. A lantern smashes, spilling oil across the boards. The smell changes instantly. Old wood and whale oil, replaced by fresh split timber and raw salt water. Someone tries to climb the stairs, slips and slams down hard, lungs refusing to pull air. On deck, Owen Chase turns and sees it. The whale's massive head presses against the hull for a moment, scarred, enormous, its eye fixed, focused. Then it pulls away, not panicked, controlled. It backs off slowly, creating distance again, like a man preparing for another swing. It's coming again. The whale disappears beneath the surface. Now the ocean becomes a lie. You can't see the threat anymore, only the movement of water betraying its path. A line of bubbles races toward the ship. And then, the second impact, lower, harder, directly beneath the waterline. The ship jolts as if struck from underneath by a cannon. Wood explodes inward. A seam tears open, and the ocean enters. At first, a thin jet of water hisses through the crack. Then it widens. The jet becomes a sheet. The sheet becomes a surge. The hold begins filling instantly. Men rush to the pumps, slipping on wet planks, hands shaking, breath uneven. Pump! Pump! But the math is already against them. They can remove gallons. The ocean is pouring in far more. Water climbs from ankles to calves. Supplies dissolve. Flour turning to paste. Food disappearing in real time. The ship tilts, just slightly. But enough, because once balance is lost, the ocean doesn't return it. It takes advantage. The Essex groans, a deep, final sound running through the wood like something alive. Then someone screams, "She's going!" Everything changes. The crew scrambles to release the whaleboats. Knots are cut. Oars drop into place. Supplies are thrown overboard in desperation. The ship is no longer fighting. It's dying. And within moments, the men face a choice. Stay aboard and sink with it, or escape into the open ocean. 3 small boats, thousands of miles from land, almost no water, almost no food, and no real chance of survival. The Essex sinks behind them, and the ocean goes quiet, almost peaceful, like it's finished the first part. Because now, it begins the slow part. They are 2,000 miles from South America, and their real enemy isn't the whale anymore. It's the sun, and it has already started burning through their skin like a countdown. The Essex disappears beneath the Pacific in minutes. And just like that, 20 men are alone. 3 whaleboats, barely 25 feet long, open to the sky, no shelter, no protection, just water in every direction. At first, they try to behave like sailors. They ration what little they salvaged, hard biscuits and small amounts of fresh water. Each man gets only a few mouthfuls a day, enough to wet the tongue, not enough to satisfy the body, because thirst doesn't negotiate. By the 3rd day, the sun begins its work. It cooks them. With no shade, they improvise, stretching scraps of sailcloth between oars. It barely helps. Heat builds underneath like a trapped furnace. Sweat pours out, then vanishes into the dry ocean wind. Salt crusts form on their skin. Lips crack. Tongues swell. Then comes the first real problem. Water is running out. Dehydration begins quietly. Dizziness, headaches, confusion. They try seawater. It only makes it worse. So they wait for rain. And when it comes, they scramble, holding hats, boots, anything to catch drops. Some drink too fast and vomit immediately. Their bodies are already weakening. Food follows the same path. First, the biscuits, then crumbs, then nothing. So they turn to the ocean. The first turtle they catch feels like salvation. They drag it into the boat, hands shaking. They drink its blood while it's warm, eat the flesh raw. It keeps them alive. For a while. But the body has limits. It begins consuming itself. Muscle disappears first, then fat, then strength. Men who once hunted whales now struggle to lift an oar. Ribs show, faces sink inward, eyes look too large, and the mind begins to fracture. Sleep becomes broken. Some wake from dreams of food. Others hear things that aren't there. Time stops behaving normally, so they create routines to stay sane. Morning, ration water. Midday, row west. Evening, search for food. Night, survive the dark, because the ocean never rests. Some nights, waves crash suddenly, filling the boats. Men bail water with shaking hands. Other nights, the sea goes still, black, endless, silent. For a moment, it feels peaceful, almost normal. Then the wind returns. Days turn into weeks. Weeks stretch longer than they should. And then, something changes. Men start dying. At first, the bodies are buried at sea, quietly, respectfully. But starvation changes the rules. Soon, there's no food left. No birds, no turtles, nothing, only bodies. The idea comes slowly. If they eat the dead, they might live longer. At first, it horrifies them. Then hunger takes over. And eventually, morality loses. The dead become food. And even that isn't enough. Because after weeks more, there are no more natural deaths. And the conversation turns darker. A lottery. One man chosen to die, so others can survive. The ocean reduces everything to numbers. Time, calories, bodies, and the equation is failing. Because after nearly 3 months, only a few men remain alive. Too weak to row, too far from land, too close to the end. And then, one morning, something appears on the horizon. A shape, a sail, and suddenly the question changes. Not if they will die, but whether help will reach them before the ocean finishes what it started. At first, no one is sure the shape is real. Weeks of hunger and dehydration have already blurred the line between reality and hallucination. Some of the men have seen ships before, only for them to vanish into empty horizon. But this time, the shape doesn't disappear. It grows, slowly. The faint outline becomes a mast. The mast becomes a hull, a ship. The surviving men try to react, but most of them can't even stand. Their bodies are no longer built for movement. Muscles have wasted away. Skin hangs loose over bone. Some raise their arms weakly. Others don't move at all. When the rescuers finally approach, they hesitate. Because what they're looking at doesn't immediately look human. The survivors are skeletal, faces hollow, eyes sunken deep into their skulls, skin burned dark by months of sun, split at the lips and hands. And inside the boat, bones, human bones. The men are barely able to speak when they're pulled aboard. Many weigh less than half of what they once did. Some collapse immediately, unable to handle even small amounts of food. But the real damage isn't physical. It stays with them. The final weeks of the journey become something they rarely speak about again. Some never return to sea. Others live quietly, carrying memories that don't fade. Because survival came with a cost. A cost measured not just in pain, but in what they were forced to become. The story spreads slowly across maritime communities. Years later, it reaches a young writer, Herman Melville. The whale becomes legend. The attack becomes fiction. And from it comes Moby Dick. But the truth is darker than the novel. The whale destroyed the Essex, but it was the ocean that finished the job. And maybe that's the real lesson buried in this story. Survival isn't always heroic. Sometimes it's just endurance. Endurance long enough to carry the memory of what happened long after it's over. Because out there, in places where no one is watching, the line between human and survival is thinner than anyone wants to believe. If you felt the fear, you were paying attention. Like the video, subscribe, and press the bell icon, because these are real survival stories, where instinct is the only thing standing between life and the end.